This episode is brought to you by CWA proud partner, Benelli. Benelli's renowned reliability, exceptional quality, and forward-thinking innovation is what sets them apart. When you purchase a Benelli shotgun or rifle, you're investing in an outstanding firearm engineered to provide many years of hassle-free hunting. Benelli has total confidence in all of its products and backs every gun with an industry-leading 10-year warranty.
Did you feel like you were a part of the hunting community at SHOT Show? Like you were in the group?
A fraud.
Did you?
No. I was in my element. Those are sales and business people.
Yeah.
But did you feel like you could talk to the situation more because of your hunting experience at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I don't want to be guilty like everybody else. I do sound better when I'm close like that.
yeah, you do.
Yeah, yes, it was an eye-opening experience, especially when we worked the Realtree booth. That was a ton of fun, because they did a poker or a blackjack game, and everybody could come up, and they got chips, custom Realtree chips, and they played them, and whatever your winning was is what Realtree donated to that charity for that 3-hour window, which was our veteran hunt program. And so I was sitting there handing out CWA hats and all those brochures that we made. And
So are all these people invited to go there, or just random people at the show just stopping by and you're like...
So to go to the SHOT Show, from my understanding, you have to either be military, police, or in the outdoor industry. Yeah. So these were people that were consumers. We had a couple of gentlemen that were stationed at Travis Air Force Base.
Oh, wow.
And so obviously, I went with, hey, have you ever hunted out? And we were out in the Sassoon, and he was like, that's great. So I gave him the flyers and some CWA hats. And then we met with the Benelli people. That was a lot of fun. The guy that we talked to is a big Colts fan. He's from Philadelphia. So, of course, I had to ask him about the Eagle fans. And we were just talking about the different hunts he had been on. And just a lot of people were really good people to sit down and really hone in their product. And Scott's really good about introducing CWA and introducing who I am to CWA. And it was, I come from the wedding world. So I was used to looking at China patterns and linens. And now I'm looking at tanks and guns and all kinds of other fun. Because I was like, this is like a Disneyland for adults. This is awesome.
Yeah. Well, we'll reintroduce him to the podcast then. So Brad has been on our podcast before in a small capacity. And now we have Eli sitting in the chair next to him. So for those that have listened to the podcast before, Eli is the reason why it all sounds so good. He's the brains, the engineer behind what we do. And if you are watching any of the videos, he is always in the corner of the room making sure that everything is going the way it should be. But
always behind the camera.
Always behind the camera and finally in front of the camera.
Try to stay behind it. But
and the reason for that is Brad, who joined CWA
a little under 2 years
ago, decided to take up waterfowl hunting, and me and Jeff were the lucky recipients of taking Brad on his first ever, and hopefully not last, and we'll just get into that, waterfowl hunt. So it was one of my favorite hunts of the whole year for so many reasons other than the actual harvesting of the ducks aspect. And I'll kind of start in from my perspective of just what I felt, and then we'll go kind of around the table and talk to everybody about it. But I've taken new hunters out ever since I've worked for CWA 7 years now, and a lot of them have been younger kids, and they have a passion for it, or their parents bring them into it. And I've had adult onset hunters, 20 to 30 to 40, and older, and they come out and it's their passion. It's something that they want to try. Out of all the people that I've taken out, I don't think I have ever had somebody as hesitant as you, but in a good way, because of how much you cared about making sure the right things were taking place, the safety on the gun, how the animal is being treated after the shot, making sure you were going to use that animal cooking later. And it was refreshing for me from a teacher aspect to see that coming from somebody, instead of just they have a passion, because you didn't really have a passion for it. You wanted to learn it.
That's a fair assumption. Yes, I feel like if you're going to have an opinion on something, you need to walk a mile in that person's waders, so to speak. And working here has certainly opened my eyes up to the bigger picture when it comes to waterfowling in particular. And not something I took lightly. It's not something still that I take lightly. It was part of a bigger plan that the four of us had all discussed. We wanted to do the hunt. Eli got me mic'd up. We got photos and we had a GoPro. We knew that we'd spend the first half of the day doing that. And then the second half of the day was the processing portion of it for our how-to series. And I decided, and I honestly, I didn't know for sure that when I was going to pull the trigger until I got in the blind with you guys.
And so go back to, your childhood, how you're raised, and why you kind of had that hesitation coming into this and coming into, working for CWA.
Yeah. So I grew up in suburban Sacramento suburb, and hunting was not something that was around much at all. I had a stepfather later on in life who was a hunter. I don't want to speak ill of him, but we didn't have a great relationship, and he was not how you guys are when it comes to hunting. He wanted to go out and shoot ducks, and then he would give them to a friend. We didn't learn about the process. We didn't go out and shoot. We didn't learn about turning that harvest into a meal. We didn't learn any of the education part, and that's not on him. That's just, he grew up and probably already knew that stuff, and my brother and I didn't gravitate towards it. And I've always been an animal lover, and so I've also been a meat eater, so I can't sit here and say that, I was, I guess it's best to say I probably just kept my head in the sand. But the reality is, it was a very humbling experience. I haven't had this conversation because I wanted to save it for the podcast. But the first thing, because Eli asked me right after I got a few shots off, was, "What do you think? What's the first thing that comes to mind?" And I was truly humbled, and I had to say a little piece, to myself and say, if you're going to do this, you're going to take the time to do the hunter education, learn the process, learn about what all the college camp and all the kids camp people and the veterans go through, and I'm going to pull the trigger, then I need to see it all the way through. And so, I decided that I was going to do it, and I did it successfully, mainly because of the people in this room. But I saw it through. I plucked my own bird after, you showed me how to go through that. Brought the mallard home, and we had a couple widgeons and a mallard, and we turned them into two different meals. Fully edible. My wife absolutely loved them.
Good.
I liked the widgeon. We had done a little differently, and that turned out a little better. But it was a process and an experience that I will never forget. And I won't say that it wasn't that I won't forget it because it was a negative thing, because it wasn't.
Yeah.
If I'm being completely frank, I would say I looked at hunting prior to CWA in a negative light. Mm-hmm. I never judged people who were hunters. And in my hunter education class, I learned that 5% of the population is hardcore hunting, and 5% of the population is hardcore against. So 90% of the population is undecided or open-minded about it. And I would say that I am in that 90%, probably at the time closer to the 5% that doesn't like hunting. But, you throw on a Netflix documentary and you can see the way that everything that we consume is treated. The massive production facilities of chickens and turkeys and cows, and the amount of products that they put, medicine in these animals. And we truly went out into a rice field. I had no idea. I did sleep the night before, not well, because I was telling my wife, I have no idea what to experience. I brought 3 or 4 different sets of clothes. I had no idea.
Yeah, that parking lot that morning, you kind of looked like a lost puppy trying to figure out what to do. It's like, just wear the jacket, you'll be fine. Put on these waders.
Put the waders on. Yeah.
So it was an incredible experience. It was one that I will do again. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to turn into, I've had people ask me, did you get bitten by the bug? 3 a.m. out in the middle of the mud. Those things were not ideal, but when I heard Jake say, when the marsh comes to life and you see, like watching that college camp and you see the transition that these kids have gone through once they've been educated, once they've gone through the process with you guys, it's real. It really is. And I would have told you before this that was more made up, but after going through it myself, it's completely a surreal process that was very genuine and one that I don't take for granted and I'm truly appreciative of. So.
When did you know that you're going to make that jump? I mean, you've been around the organization for some time. You've seen all the programs. You've seen all of our banning projects, hunts, properties.
It could have been a year ago. Why now?
Yeah, was it the peer pressure of both of us?
That's a great question.
You're going. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Because we had talked about it, like, hey, we're going to get you on the duck blind on your first hunt, and you're like, yeah, okay. But there was a little bit of peer pressure. Was that getting you over the hump, or was it something else? As like, I've got to give this a try. I've seen so much of what CWA does, and I've met all these duck hunters. I got to see what I'm missing.
I'm not somebody that is super influenced by peer pressure, so that wasn't what it was. And I told you guys this, and Eli can attest. In the blind, I would not have done that with probably any other human beings than the people in this room. So. Sitting in on those kids' camps and the college camps and everything with the two of you and seeing the passion and the knowledge that you guys have and the way that you guys get so much satisfaction by taking people out and educating them and it seems like you have more appreciation and passion for that than you getting your own birds because you're bringing new people out and probably sharing the experience that we had.
Yeah, that
was enough for me. More than anything else. That was, okay, these guys live this through and through. I trust you guys. We spent so many hours in videos or in podcasts. A lot of people have asked me to go hunting since I've been at this organization, and I've just smiled and nodded at most of them. So I knew that I was safe with you guys. I knew that you guys it would be a judgment-free zone unless I totally whiffed on every shot. I knew that you would educate me throughout the process, and that was the reason that I did it. It certainly helped, and I may hunt with other people one day in the future, but I would be honest, I definitely prefer it with you guys because it's a firearm in your hands. It's it's taking a life, even if it's a bird's or a fish or whatever it is. It still is something that not everybody's wired to do. So. I talked with my wife and my son about it, and I brought the birds home and finished the processing part in my garage, and we brined the duck breasts and turned that whole experience and that whole harvest into just a great meal, and it was an experience that I could then share with my family after I shared it with you guys. So that was why I did it.
Yeah,
because. You guys could have peer pressured me for another 2-3 years. It wouldn't matter. So, it's a true testament to who you two are. Your credibility, the fact that you guys are so passionate about it made it easier for me to buy into that passion. That was the main part.
No, we appreciate that. And like I said, you coming out opened my eyes to other people that may want to go but are on the fence because, a lot of the people that we deal with are already over that hump or have done it before, and they do have that bug. And it's honestly nice to take somebody out who's like, it may not be for me, but I'll go every once in a while. And that's a perspective that I've honestly never had out in the blind, taking somebody for their first time, where it's like, the appreciation of it is there so much you're going to do it again, but it's not your hobby, and that's totally fine. But you understand what it is now. You can watch all the videos, you can go even out, and until you actually do that action, like you said, you haven't walked the walk.
Yeah. And I definitely didn't want to have that opinion and feel like I was being hypocritical at the same time. And working with you guys and working with CWA. you see how everybody is and why it's so important to them, why it's so important to pass. I mean, we talk about next generation and the R3 movement. And for me, prior to this experience, it was more fluff and words, right? Because I'm a marketing person. That's my job. This took it out of the job category and took it into understanding who you guys, who hunters, and who my market, these people really are. It gets you a much better, it gives you just a better exposure to the humans that you're working with, or the humans that you're hoping to, because we want to, like you said, reach out to the people like myself, or like Eli is very similar in this boat where
100%. I've literally I think from my perspective going out on that hunt, I've been wanting to get into duck hunting since I started working with CWA. But I think very much like what you were saying, like your whole perspective on it. And I don't think I've filmed somebody's first hunt yet. I think that was the first one. But I think that what Carson was saying about like you going into it wanting to know the entire process, I was like almost getting the bug for you. And I'm like, dude, I just got my hunter's ed, and like I want to get into it now for that exact reason. Like I want to understand what the waterfowl hunter is, like who is the one.
Yeah, from you behind the lens watching that hunt, what did it how did it unfold to you? Because I'm there with him, dealing with the guns and make sure everything's safe. But you're sitting there watching. Like, what did you notice and see from his perspective that he may have just in the moment just gone over his head?
Yeah, I felt like I noticed like definitely a transition. So I remember, one of the shots, I was going back looking through the footage, and you see like, and I think it was right when I asked you that, I think you got a duck. And then that's when I turned and asked you, like, what are your thoughts? Like, you just got your first duck. What are your thoughts and stuff like that? Because I think I could just see like a obvious transition. There was like an excitement. I think on the GoPro, I have you going, I got that one. And it was just like, wow.
Claimer.
Yeah. And he's like, dude, my heart's going like 1,000 miles an hour right now. And I'm just like, yeah, like you can really, I don't know, just from the capture perspective where I'm just like, following, the camera was on him, just seeing his whole,
transformation.
Your body language, I think there was a little bit of nerves there. And then, right after, and you're like, my heart's racing and all that stuff. And that was super cool. And I think that's like, I want to do it real bad. I got the waders. I got a shotgun.
You're next.
I'm next
on the
man.
list.
Yeah.
You're next on the list.
I have to get a goose hunt in there.
Yeah. Well, I would say by the end of the hunt, like just looking down at the blind, you just seemed more kind of relaxed.
A lot more relaxed.
Taking it all in. Well, I think a lot of people don't take people out because they're like, hey, the hunting might not be good. And everyone, if the hunting in terms of birds in the bag is slow, a lot of people think the hunting is terrible. That day we were fortunate. The hunting was pretty decent. And we had a number of opportunities, but there's a lot of times where people might only have one, but I don't think that changes your experience. And I think a lot of people get away from that. And I have too. I will be like, I'm just going to go out by myself tomorrow because it might not warrant inviting someone else out because there might not be a lot of opportunities, but you get away from the point of why you're in the blind with, people that you like to be around, safe environment. It's not about the birds in the bag, right? And I think a lot of people need to get back to why you're out there, opposed to killing a bunch of ducks or harvesting a bunch of ducks.
And one goose.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we did get a snow goose, didn't we? Yeah.
We did get one snow goose.
I was just there for the dog, though. That was it.
Your dog was very well behaved.
Boomer.
I was surprised.
Appreciate that. Yeah, he's been doing good.
Yeah, it was. And the four of us get along really well, so that helps, right?
Yeah.
But I think all three of you could clearly tell that I was nervous, but very focused and in the moment. And at the end of the day, if you're going to put a firearm in your hands and you're going to take a life, you should probably be that way. Take it seriously and take in that whole experience. And I can remember like it was yesterday because it was nothing I've ever done before. That was incredible. It was, we were out in the dark. I almost fell into the water twice walking out to the duck blind, which I was concerned with, carrying that Benelli in one hand. And this episode is brought to you by Benelli. Thank you very much. I did kill my first greenhead mallard with Drake mallard, with a Benelli.
Benelli M2.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it felt good. The experience that we had where we're sitting in there and I'm looking way up at the sky and that's what I was telling Carson. I was like, they all look the same to me. I can't tell what is a duck and a goose and everything else or what type, and then, I was getting all serious and putting the covers in or covers over and you start calling and then, Carson be like, okay, so they're coming in here from the northwest. Be prepared in about 30 seconds. They're going to be coming right in on the northeast. And I was thinking, things like 50, 75 yards going the other direction. What are you talking about? And then sure enough, he's like, you guys pop it open, take them. And I'm looking and this duck is just right there looking at me. And I remember the first couple times it caught me way off guard because of how close and just how the working the bird, I didn't really understand what that meant. I thought that you just go in there, you sit in a hole, you hope it gets close, you start blowing that thing, the duck call at them, and some of them figure it out and come around. But like watching as you guys are seeing this thing go a certain direction and then knowing where it's going to end up and when it's going to be there or close, approximation was incredible. I mean, the first at least 2 times, I was so concerned about how to shoulder it and how to pick it up and where the safety was. It was so robotic that I'm like, trying to get the shot off, and I did not succeed.
Yeah, as he was... So we did some, dry fire drills in the blind before shoot time. Get up out of your seat, take the safety off, pull the trigger. And then, like you saying, the first 2, all I was doing, I was sitting next to Brad in the middle seat, and I was pushing the cover over so he could stand up. And I was looking at him, and I could see in his head the gears going, okay, stand. Okay, gun up. Okay, gun to shoulder. Okay. And by that time, the duck was 30 yards away. And by like time 4, it was all one motion. And it had clicked. And it's just the whole evolution of it was starting real quick.
I would suggest if somebody is on the fence and wants to go out and go hunting, they're probably not always going to be as fortunate as to have people like you two with them. Practice your shooting. Because I had shot twice in the last year or 2, and I'd shot like only 1 or 2 times, so I hadn't really been super familiar with that gun. Thank God it was so easy to use, and I had you coaching me right in my ear, like making one fluid movement, take a breath, no big deal. And I remember in the hunter education, I thought there was going to be so much more testing involved, so I was like super diligent about every word.
Hunter ed front to back.
It was like college was happening all over again. But I remember they talked about in that that things just start to go dark, right before you pull the trigger, and that you kind of get that tunnel vision. And I thought, that seems dramatic. Well, the minute that I stood up from that blind and I'm getting ready to fire, everything else went dark, and it was the craziest thing in the world. And so then I pulled the trigger, and then Eli asked me right after, how do you feel? And I'm just like, still trying to process what just happened. I mean, it was a great experience, but it was something that took a little bit to really fully comprehend it. And that's why when he asked me, what are you thinking? I'm just humbled.
Yeah.
If you're going to pull that trigger, enjoy the experience. The experience I had with you guys was incredible, sitting down and going through the process and which calls to use and which birds were where. I mean, I still don't know how you can identify what you did.
Practice.
Yeah.
Just time in the blind. That's all it is.
There's no other way.
Yeah. But it's funny, after the hunt, you looked at me, I think when we were at back at the ranch picking birds, you're like, do you ever get sick of that? I was like, no. Because I think the answer is no, because every day is different.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, every day something that you've never seen could happen, memories, etc. I hope it never gets old. Hasn't yet. I mean,
and we're not just doing it for a passion, we're doing it for a job. So we get double doses.
Yeah. But I think it's just, to your point, it's fun for us to see someone experience it for the first time. You guys were both doing it that. And, Carson and I hunted with each other a bunch. So, when we're hunting together, like there's no like take them or whatever. Like you just, here they come. You just know, like you're reading each other's minds. You just kind of know. And that was kind of neat to kind of have Carson on one end of the blind and you in between us. And wow.
I'm not going to lie. If we didn't have to go and film the how-to part of it, I would have stayed longer.
Yeah.
Because just the whole process, I don't want to call it a sport because it's not, but I mean, it's sometimes like once things start to click, you kind of want to do it again and make sure that it wasn't just luck, you know, and as we went through the day, it certainly felt more like something that I could understand and enjoy, but we had work to do, so we'll have to have a 2.0, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, it's good. It's good and bad. It's one of the things I was doing previous years. We were teaching duck camps on the last, like the third week in January, and we get these people and they go out on their hunt and they're like, I want to go hunt more. And I was like, well, the end of the season's a week and 3 days from now. It's like kind of the same thing with your hunt. Like we took you out and it's like we all got busy and it's like, well, right now the season is 2 days away and it'll be next year before we get you out. But next year, if you have that bug, I mean, we got a whole season to get you out and get Eli out and start, you know. Our job and our passion is taking new hunters out. I don't care if you work for CWA. I don't care if, you know, you have your own business. I want to get people out there. And I want to get people out there, especially people that are supporting us in a direct way, whether it's Brad or Eli, you know, and pass that on. But one of the things that I will take this a long way, is nobody has ever said to me, and he said to both of us, and Jeff looked at me after, he goes, did he say that? Brad said, did you think I was going to come today? And I go, I didn't even. Jeff goes,
even a question.
Yeah, Jeff goes, was that even an option?
It's like, were you gonna bail us?
It's like,
we can find out where you live.
I was like, funny. I've never had anybody ask me that.
I wish I got that on camera.
That's when I knew like it was that serious, because he looked at me serious, like, do you think I was gonna come today? I was like, I didn't even know that was a thought of not coming.
Did you think he was gonna bail?
Like, as we were walking out on the levee, like, was that a question?
That's funny.
Well, I would not have flaked, but yeah, I was, like I said, I was not certain I was going to do it till I got into the blind I was.
No, that's great. Like I said, it was so cool for me because I've never had that teaching people for 7 years. I've never had that level of safety precaution and just wanting to perform to the top, whatever aspect of the hunt it was, and that's so cool to me.
Yeah.
Eli sent us that photo right afterwards, and I sent it to actually one of my good friends who's in law enforcement, and he said, if I didn't see this photo right in front of me, I would never have believed it, because I mean, I grew up with him. We went to high school together, and you know, he knows my previous opinions, and so I think he was proud, but also very surprised, and my mom said the same thing. She's like, I never thought you would do that. And, you know, but again, it's not like I didn't just wake up one day, have a wild hair, and then went hunting.
It was well thought out.
It was well thought out. I worked with you guys, but like the hunter education process, that's not, I guess you could force it, but it takes a while, you know, and I've always been the type that, because I've owned pistols, and if I'm going to have a firearm, that's all I'm thinking about in that period of time. So, you know, going out there, getting in there with you guys, we talk about it with the veteran hunt program, but the camaraderie that you have, you know, I haven't had something like that since football, where you're in it together with people that you care about and that you trust, and you're operating as a unit. Because for me, I mean, I still don't know how to blow the duck call very well, and I'm sure none of them would have showed up had I used it. So, you know, you're blowing the duck call. Carson the entire time is walking me through which types of ducks they are, you know, where they probably will be coming, why they act the way they are. Because I was really inquisitive on trying to figure out, how can you tell that this duck that's way over here is going to end up over here, and how do you know that that's that kind of duck? And talking about the flight patterns and the way that they act, you know, it's also impressive because, like you had told me, but many times before, some of those ducks are not legal, or birds. And to me, you know, I wear glasses usually, but like, I couldn't tell that. By the time I would be able to tell that, they would be right up on me, you know? And so hunters, like you once you realize how much more layers are involved in taking an animal's life and going hunting, you appreciate it that much more. The calling is an art, you know, working the dog is an art. The identification part is an art. The shooting aspect of it. I mean, it was just, there's so much more into it than I just never truly considered. And I wouldn't have if I didn't do this.
Like, what was one of your biggest hurdles? Was it the gun safety part of it, or was it actually harvesting an animal and then, you know, taking it home, eating it?
We're talking about an operational hurdle? Like the fact that I was robotic?
No.
Like a mental hurdle.
What was your hurdle in getting into it? in terms of finally deciding, you know what, I'm going to give this thing a whirl?
I really didn't think I would ever go hunting for the entire time I was at CWA.
Yeah.
But what's the
why?
hurdle?
Why not?
Why?
I never pictured myself being able to take an animal's life.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right.
So for me, that part of it it's been in my mind a lot. It's something that I wrestle with for sure. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I'll give you, for instance, the very first time I worked with you two and Eli was all the same day. It was when we did the veteran hunt video at Grizzly Island. The rain was like coming sideways. Right? And I'm intimidated.
It was pouring.
Yeah. And I'm intimidated by all these veterans around that are, incredible people, but they're all badasses and they all have these cool stories. And I remember as they're coming in throughout the day that, they're starting to unload their boats. And I'm walking up because I just want to be helpful. And, hey, give me your stuff. I'll help you out. And the guys start handing me ducks. And I remember grabbing that duck and be like, almost puking about it. Like I'm holding this dead duck in my hand and putting him down. And just that thought, right? That experience to the fact that I harvested a duck and then I processed that same duck. And the whole time was, I don't want to say cool as a cucumber because that would be a lie, but I did it without hesitation and I did it. And I think the education, the experience, and the process and willingness, if you're going to take an animal's life to see it all the way through, is why I had so much respect for that experience. Mm-hmm. And I, plucked the entire thing out. We breasted it out, which probably Jeremiah wouldn't be stoked about, but we breasted it out and we ate it. I mean, that same day, and Eli can attest,
It's good.
What did we have? It was Spoonie. You prepped.
We had a pintail, and I think we had a spoon at the same time.
Both, yeah.
Spoon, pintail, and maybe one mallard.
I think it was just...
No, those were the two that he cooked up.
Yeah.
And I remember because the first thing you handed me, and that was probably one of the first times I ever had duck.
Oh, that was the spoon.
Yeah.
The first one was the spoon,
yes,
second
and
one
you
was the
gave it to
pintail.
me, and you're like, what do you think? I was like, it tastes like a steak, but it tastes good. And then he's like, and then you said, well, try this one out. And that was the pintail. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Tastes like filet mignon. I mean, that's delicious.
Yeah, that's what was the fat on, the pintail had the fat on, yeah.
And it was pretty simple. I mean, you rendered it down.
Yeah, it people get intimidated by the art of cooking, and we've touched on some of that on some of our other podcasts, but that has become one of my favorite aspects of hunting is the preparation and the after, because if you know how to do it right, it is so good. And I think it's become almost a passion of mine to prove people wrong. Oh, duck sucks. Duck tastes like liver. Duck this, that. It's like, try this.
Yeah.
If you don't like this, then you don't like steak because it tastes like a fine steak.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 99% sure that those ducks we harvested were antibiotic and growth hormone free. So we could feel good that we were, like Jeremiah's company, we went from field to plate, and the same day, you can't really beat any fresher than that experience. Yeah. And I think that, I'm assuming that just like myself, some people are, they grapple with laziness, the fact that, the grocery store can produce what it can provide, but also not everybody can do that. But I think part of the biggest hurdles is lack of education and lack of or choosing ignorance. And I would say that I'll be the first to admit that's probably the boat that I would fall in. Like I said, I didn't understand the full details. I didn't know much. So working with you guys for so long kind of started that conversation. Once I started the hunter education part of it, really diving into the whole experience and educating myself on everything, and then being in the field with you guys and actually seeing it through changed my perception on hunting. Obviously there's the bad actors and everything, but overall, people that have their heart in the right place and want to share those experiences with others, I strongly would encourage it. Not only because of how much hunting helps conservation, but because it's a serious experience that you can have that I hope one day to share with my son.
Yeah.
So.
And what made you accept the job here at CWA?
Yeah, that's a strange job to accept, knowing you're not all for it from the beginning.
Well, I spent 14 years in the wedding business, and that wasn't exactly the most exciting. I mean, I got to work with a lot of people who I enjoyed, but like I told Scott when I interviewed with him, I'm not a professional wedding person. I'm not a wedding designer. I'm not a wedding planner. I've not done that a bunch. So, I wanted to be closer and closer to my family and spend more time with them and work in an organization, because there's hunting, and hunting is obviously the central theme at CWA, but it is not the entirety of it.
Yes.
Right. I mean, the first thing that really got me hooked was the veteran side of it. My brother's in the Air Force, and I think all sides of all arguments should be able to support the veterans in general. Working with you guys and Mike Kellogg, for me, made it so easy to kind of start buying into it. Mm-hmm. And then I went to the kids camp, and you're seeing, 10, 11, 12-year-olds with their parents, proud parents, sitting kind of in the background, and you guys teaching them, archery and duck calling. That was one of the best experiences, watching how patient you are with kids and duck calls in their hands. There's so much good that CWA does that I don't think people always know about, and I take some of that personally now that that's literally my job, is to make people more aware of what CWA is, but the advocacy work, but the wetlands work, and really educating kids. My son likes screens like most kids, right? Likes to play video games, likes to watch TV. And I remember Jake asked me in my final interview, he asked me, yeah, it's great. We all have good work-life balances, but why would you care about CWA? And similar to kind of how you asked it. And it took me a second to really think about that and process it. But being a parent, you realize, how much of your kid's future is going to be dependent on what you allow and what you expose them to. And my son was in kindergarten when the COVID stuff started. So he was at 5 years old looking at, a little 4-inch screen from his teacher. And I feel like the whole COVID world just kind of pushed that separate, isolation for kids. And you can see it now years later where it's starting, in my opinion, to have some effects. And so I wanted to be able to have something where I could be knowledgeable and passionate about, to show my son and really let him see that there's this whole world outside of video games.
Yeah.
Right? And when we are out at the marsh, or when those kids are at these camps, you don't see one of them looking at a phone or wanting to play video games or texting or being on social media. They're out doing what many generations enjoyed and only knew as their way.
They're being kids.
Yeah. They're enjoying nature. So that's a huge part for me, is getting to see how we are bringing the outside and putting it front and center for children, to have them really understand that there's more to life than video games. It's a big part. Yep. And I would encourage any parent that's even considering this, or has kids that want to just sit in front of a TV, do some fishing, do some hiking, look at hunting, take your kids out, let them enjoy all of God's creations. It's right there for you, and that's one of the things we do with doing those camps all over, is just helping. If the parents don't know how to expose their children properly, we fill that gap and educate them by bringing them out and teaching them firearm safety and everything else, so that they can go out and enjoy the passion that you guys are, living with.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm not a CWA plant. This is a legitimate story. Anybody that knows me will tell you that they would be just as surprised as my mother and my friend that said that they wouldn't have believed it if they didn't see it.
You're going to have a cool video to prove it, too.
Yeah, you start sending it out.
The whole thing.
Told you so.
Yep.
What's the one thing about the hunt that you remember?
I want to say that it was when I pulled the trigger, but I got to be honest, that was like a flash. It was really after that, after that, sitting there and taking that mental inventory of what just transpired, what that meant, and what I was going to make sure I was going to do if I was going to do that. And so when you were out there with the dog, Boomer, retrieving those, the ducks, it was that 2 minutes of just internal solitude of thinking, okay, well, you did it. Like I said, I fully genuine was not 100% sure I was going to pull the trigger. I was going to be in there. I was going to at least aim the gun and
bang.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just have Eli cut it up so it
special effects.
Yeah. So it was an experience that, like I said, I think if more people had that experience, they would get it.
Yeah.
You know, there's always going to be like the fringe opinions, but there's so many people that just maybe they've considered it and they just don't know. And I would encourage them to, you know, find somebody that you know that you can trust, or sign up for one of our duck camps, or if you have children, for the kids camp, because that kind of exposure and that kind of mentorism is, I don't even know if that's a word, but is what is, in my opinion, a lot of society is missing, and is what is needed for this, so that they can feel confident and safe, right? I've taken my son out fishing a handful of times. As you guys know, I am incredibly unsuccessful at it.
We're gonna change.
Yeah. Just wait. Give it like 2 months. Just wait.
We got your back.
Yeah, we got to get that figured out. But I mean, that's the whole thing, is giving it a try. I mean, now, you know, we have YouTube and the internet to educate yourself. But that's another reason why we have these camps everywhere that we do, is you can see it on TV. You know, you can see it on a computer screen, but you got to do the time, educate yourself, get the experience, go out to, you know, a shooting range, learn some of those basic fundamentals so that you're not as robotic as I was, and find that mentor. And if you don't have that mentor, we have a how-to series which will at least start the process. It will spark the interest. But that's where the duck camps, and like you had said in a previous episode, the duck camps, I'm sure, are one of the biggest values that you've seen because of having that experience.
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we're in California, so, you know, there's not just, your neighbor is probably not a hunter, so you're going to have to do a little research and get to know some people. And I would encourage you, because these folks are high quality human beings.
Hey, you're a part of this just as much as we are.
Yeah.
Well, boys, that's a wrap on our day of filming. Brad, honestly, I couldn't appreciate you more for coming out and doing what you did. It takes a lot more than you know to come out and deal with us, but
Yeah. I wasn't taking no for an answer, though. I mean,
yeah, it would have been rough after that.
You're gonna get peer pressured either way.
And it sounds
I
like
had no doubt that you were coming.
Eli's next on the docket. So
I'm next, man.
He's ready to roll.
you
ready.
you train Brad behind the camera, and then Brad
Yep.
films you.
Yeah.
Swap.
But then we don't know what kind of, nobody might ever get to see that if I do it properly.
The lens cap is still on.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you guys. Like I said, I did not share this story with very many people because I wanted this to be as original and authentic as I could.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
So, you know, thank you guys for doing that, because, like I said, it was an experience that I will cherish and remember for many, many years.
Well, no, thanks. Thank you guys for coming out, and thank you guys for doing everything that you do for California waterfowl, and you know, you're kind of the minds behind the curtain. So we appreciate you guys too.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Save It for the Blind podcast. You can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.